At this point, what I would do is run in the wire, which will lead from the robot to the remote. Normally when I would paint the back or screw the back on, if I'm paying attention, I would put the hole that I meant for the power cord over on this side. My reason for thinking of that is there's already a lot of stuff going on this side with chains and stuff. And if I bring it over on this side, it's pretty well open. You can do it either way. It isn't really a problem. But I also normally like to take like a grommet or something and force it into the hole first, so there's less chance of the wire ever getting cut. And this big grommet will in fact force into that hole. You just start wedging it and poke at it with a screwdriver, and before you know it, you've got the inside poked in and the outside's left out. You can see that there's holes provided in the pivot plate, so you'll go through the leg hole and then through the pivot plate hole and bring it up in there. I would also normally, besides having the grommet there, tie a knot in the wire, which of course once you figure out how much wire you need running up in there, you need at least 6 inches. You could just run 6 or so inches while it's out here, tie a knot, and then feed the wire through, because it can be kind of hard to tie a knot at this point. Normally tie a knot so that yanking on this won't ever be able to get all the way back up there and do any yanking on the motor parts. But I would bare the 2 ends of the wire, solder the green one again to the right side, which we've determined is ground when the robot's walking forward, and solder the white one over to the left side of the motor, which is positive when the robot's walking forward. Once you've got that wire connected, you can then screw your finished plate on, which we'd already did the eye gels, the nose, and all of that, and put all your screws in. You're almost done at this point. So if we had this stuff on, we could then put the feet on. Let me show you how to go about doing the feet. One thing before we get to the feet, there are 2 screws that need to be cut short. These screw holes that are right into the arm things, take the normal screws, screw them in, then take them out, because what you're doing there is cutting the threads into the inner metal. Screw it in, take it out. Again, it's just the ones right above where the arm joints are. Remember, we've got that pivot point in there. If we run this whole long screw in, that little pivot part can hit and hang up on that screw. So this would be another time when the snip dikes would come in real in handy. Just cut the screws about half as long. So instead of being 3/8, they're just long enough then to go in and hold, but not long enough to cause any problem, like that. See? Okay, so we have the feet, and the feet will already come with the screws in them and ready to go. In order to take the screws in and out, you need this long Phillips screwdriver. And you're working at a slight angle, but it shouldn't be a problem. You take those 2 extra long screws out, the pivot screws. And of course, this is assuming you already have your feet all painted up and ready to go. Just rest the foot on there. Let me see if there's some way we can angle this so you can really see what I'm doing. I don't know if there is. I'll try to hold it. Normally I just rest it on the edge of the counter and let the foot dangle. But you see, I went through the hole in the metal into the hole that's already in the resin foot part, and just screw it down. Screw it in as far as you can without it getting tight, because you want it left loose, but you don't want a bunch of that screw head hanging out. You know, something like that's fine. And then you'll catch the upper one. You can usually just feel the hole like that. Put the screwdriver on it, like so. Just screw it in. Just like that. So you can see the foot's very free to move, and it isn't going to go anywhere. Do the same thing on that foot. I know I didn't hook the wire up because I just have to take it all apart again, as you guys know, but that would have been hanging out the back of it. the robot would be done at this point. We would just take the other end of the wire and move on to building the control box. Cover just a couple of small things here. I'm taking everything apart basically. These holes here, of course, not only catch the front and the side, but they again would screw into those pivot plates in there. If your pivot plates aren't lined up, remember you can always reach in there with a screwdriver and push up on them a little bit until you can see the holes line up. Once you see the hole line up, you can start the screw. It's no big deal. Or the opposite, if for any reason that plate was too far forward and you need to drag it back, you might want to make a little metal hook. Just reach up in there and hook on one of those holes, or even a screwdriver will go in there and wedge in enough. You could pull back on a little bit till it lines up enough to drop the screw in. And the only other thing I can think of is, I know I mentioned it before, that you should put a little a little bit of goop glue on the motor mount screws so that there's no chance of those ever working loose. Let's get it open. If the wires from the remote did come up, I would pass them right in between, right in there, and put a little bit of glue on the nut and the wire. Holds that down out of the way. Put a little bit of glue on that nut and screw so it's going to stay there. We talked about lubing these connections that are moving, you know, putting a little bit of grease or a little bit of oil on that, putting glue on the ends of those screws, otherwise they'll tend to either work loose or work tight, which is even worse. Put a little bit of lube, light grade oil or grease on those pivot points. That's it. You don't do any lube to the chain or up there or anything like that. So I think that's it.